Attention, lovers of comeback stories. If the first paragraph grabs you and you don't want to miss a single detail of this epic ascent, subscribe to our channel right now, give us a like, and leave a comment immediately telling us what you expect from Evelyn. He told her she was nothing without him. As they signed the final papers, he leaned in and whispered, "Have fun on the tube, Evelyn. I hope that settlement covers your rent for at least a month." He chuckled, adjusting the cufflink on his $5,000 suit, and strode out toward his new life. She was left alone on the pavement, defeated. But the car that pulled up to the curb wasn't a taxi, and the man who stepped out to open the door for her was no ordinary chauffeur. In that single, breathtaking second, her ex-husband's world, built on arrogance and lies, came crashing down. The scent of the end, a judgment and a broken vow. The air in the royal courts of Justice Family Division smelled of stale coffee and cheap disinfectant. It was the scent of endings, and for Evelyn Chase, it was a nauseatingly familiar one. She sat on a hard wooden bench, her hands tightly clasped around a worn leather portfolio. She wore her one decent suit, a simple navy ensemble from a department store. It was 3 years old, but clean and pressed. It was the suit she'd bought for the interview she thought she'd take before Gavin Thorne convinced her that his career at Kingsbridge Capital had to be the priority. "One of us has to support the other," he'd said, smiling that winning smile that had once captivated her. "And let's be honest, darling, my bonus potential is a bit higher than your degree in art history." So she had supported him. She had managed their home, entertained his insufferable clients, and edited his reports, shrinking her own world until it fit inside the luxurious penthouse he paid for. The heavy hallway door opened, and he appeared. Gavin Thorne. He was not alone. Clinging to his arm was Bianca Hayes, the 24-year-old solicitor he'd sworn was just a friend. Bianca's blonde hair was immaculate, her white suit aggressively bright in the dismal corridor. She carried a 10,000-pound Hermes Birkin bag, a bag Evelyn recognized. It was the one she had pointed out in a shop window 6 months earlier, just before she found the hotel receipts. Gavin saw Evelyn. His face, which she had once loved, twisted into a smile of pure, naked arrogance. "Evelyn, darling!" he exclaimed, letting his voice ring out. People turned to look. "I almost didn't recognize you. Are you all right? You look tired." Evelyn stood, refusing to be minimized. "Hello, Gavin. Bianca." Bianca gave her a look of pity that was more insulting than a slap. "Evelyn, I'm so glad this is all finally being resolved. It must be such a relief for you." "Mr. Thorne," Gavin's solicitor, a shark named Mr. Davies, interrupted. "Courtroom 3B, we're on the list." Gavin nodded, but his eyes remained locked on Evelyn. He leaned in as if sharing a secret, yet spoke loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "Honestly, Evie, you should have just taken the first offer. This whole court charade, it's just sad." "I just want what is fair, Gavin," Evelyn said, her voice barely a whisper. "Fair?" He laughed. "Fair is what I built. You were just there. Did you really think the judge would give you half for arranging flowers?" He adjusted his silk tie, a bright, unpleasant blue. "Look, I have to run. Big meeting after this. The penthouse goes on sale Monday. Bianca and I are moving into the new place in Mayfair. But don't worry." He patted his chest pocket. "Your little settlement check is ready. Don't spend it all at once. Perhaps a nice studio flat near the Jubilee line." He and Bianca swept past, leaving the scent of expensive cologne and mockery in their wake. Evelyn felt her face burn, but she refused to cry. She had cried enough in the lonely flat she'd been renting for 6 months, the one paid for by selling her grandmother's last few pieces of jewelry. Inside the courtroom, it was worse. Gavin's lawyer painted her as a bitter, lazy wife who contributed nothing. Gavin, on the stand, listed his assets, his promotions, his long hours. He generously offered a one-time payout of £50,000. She has no claim to my bonuses or my portfolio, Gavin stated calmly. Ms. Chase hasn't worked in 5 years. She has no idea what it takes to earn at my level. When the bored-looking judge finally stamped the papers, the gavel was like a sledgehammer blow to Evelyn's chest. It was done. She was divorced. She was free. And by Gavin's metrics, she was worthless. As she walked out, he passed her and didn't even look at her. He just uttered one last thing. Good luck, Evelyn. You'll need it. Evelyn walked out of the courthouse into the bright, damp London sun. She clung to her portfolio, the £50,000 settlement feeling like 50,000 pieces of pity. It wouldn't last 6 months, not after paying her solicitor. She heard them before she saw them. Gavin and Bianca laughing as they walked down the courthouse steps. Dinner at the Wolseley tonight, my love, Gavin said, pulling Bianca close and kissing her. We're celebrating. Oh, look, Bianca said, pointing with her chin. She's still here. Evelyn stood on the pavement, phone in hand, trying to open the Uber app. Her hands were shaking. Gavin approached, his smile gone, replaced by a final look of condescension. What's the matter, Evelyn? Can't get a signal? You know, for a £50,000 payout, you could probably afford a black cab. Or is that too much of a splurge? Evelyn said nothing. She just stared ahead, concentrating on the traffic. God, you're pathetic, he hissed. Look at you. You're a ghost. I did you a favor, Evelyn. I freed you. Now you can go back to whatever it was you did before you met me, working in that dusty, second-rate gallery. Gavin, leave her alone, Bianca said, not out of kindness but impatience. Let's just go. My feet hurt. In a second, my love. Gavin was savoring this. This was his final victory. I just want to send her off. Make sure she gets to her new life safely. Hope you brought a tube pass, Evelyn. He was about to say more when a car rounded the corner. It wasn't just a car. It was a shadow. A piece of silent, impossibly sleek engineering that made Gavin's new BMW 7 Series, parked down the street, look like a child's toy. It was a matte midnight black Bugatti Chiron that seemed to drink the sunlight. It moved with the grace of a predator and stopped directly in front of Evelyn. Gavin and Bianca froze. Holy hell, Gavin breathed, his eyes wide. He knew cars. He knew that vehicle was worth more than his penthouse. Who the hell is that? They stared, assuming it was for a visiting judge or politician. Then the driver's side door opened. The man who emerged was not a chauffeur. He was tall, dressed in a charcoal suit so perfectly tailored it seemed an extension of his body rather than clothing. His hair was silver at the temples, and his face was sharp, angular, and utterly impassive. He radiated an aura of absolute, terrifying authority. Gavin knew that face. He'd seen it on the cover of Forbes. He'd seen it in the Wall Street Journal. It was Julian Sterling, the ghost of Canary Wharf, the reclusive tech and logistics billionaire. A man rumored to be worth over £50 billion. A man whose firm, Sterling Industries, was a major client of Kingsbridge Capital. Gavin's blood ran cold. His mouth went dry. No, he whispered. It can't be. Julian Sterling did not look at Gavin. He did not look at Bianca. He did not acknowledge their existence. He calmly walked around the front of the Bugatti and stopped directly in front of Evelyn. He reached out and, with a delicacy completely at odds with his formidable presence, opened the passenger door. Evelyn, he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the street noise like a scalpel. Is this resolved? Evelyn finally looked up, her expression serene. The trembling in her hands had ceased. Yes, Mr. Sterling. It is finalized. Good, he said. He glanced at her simple portfolio. Did you bring the files on the Rotterdam acquisition? They're in my bag, sir, she replied. Excellent. We have a flight to Geneva. The Sotheby's auction is tomorrow, and I want to review the provenance of that missing Picasso once more before we commit." He held the door for her. Evelyn paused, and, for the first time, turned to look at Gavin. She didn't look angry. She didn't look triumphant. She looked indifferent. It was the look one might give a stranger who has bumped into them in a crowd. She gave him a tiny nod. "Goodbye, Gavin." She slid into the low seat of the Bugatti. Julian Sterling shut the door with a soft, expensive thud. He walked back to the driver's side. Only then, just before getting in, did he finally drop his gaze on Gavin. His eyes were steel gray. He looked at Gavin for exactly 1 second. It wasn't a look of rage. It was a look of complete and utter disdain. It was the look a king might give a court jester who has just told a bad joke. Then he got in the car. The engine, which had been nearly silent, roared to life, a deep, vibrating sound of pure power. The car pulled away from the curb and vanished into the traffic, leaving Gavin and Bianca standing in its wake. Bianca was the first to speak, her voice high and shaky. Marco, who was she? How does she know him? Who was that?" Gavin was frozen. His face was chalk white. The smile was gone, replaced by a mask of nauseating, nascent horror. "That," he stammered, his 5,000-pound suit suddenly feeling like a cheap rental. "That was Julian Sterling. Interactive moment and CTA. The unexpected turn has left Gavin speechless. Is this the start of Gavin's decline, or just a stumble? How do you think Evelyn secured the favor of such a powerful man? Share your theories in the comments. And if this moment took your breath away, like and subscribe to not miss the rest of the story. The forging of a diamond. The Sterling Eye. 6 months earlier, Evelyn was sleeping on her sister's sofa, surrounded by boxes of what was left of her life. Gavin had been brutal. The moment she confronted him about Bianca, he hadn't just gotten defensive. He went on the offense. He froze their joint accounts, hired the solicitor, and served her divorce papers before she had even packed a bag. He alleged irreconcilable differences and financial abandonment, declaring her a drain on his assets. She was broken. The woman who had graduated with honors in art history and curation from the Courtauld Institute, who had been the most promising junior curator at the Tate Britain before Gavin moved her for his career, was now applying for barista jobs. One night, trawling obscure, high-level job boards, she found a listing. It was anonymous, posted by a private recruitment firm. Wanted, private collection manager and asset curator. Must have expert knowledge in the 17th century Dutch masters, postmodern sculpture, and high-level forgery identification. Must be willing to travel internationally 80% of the time. Must be able to pass an exhaustive background check and sign a lifelong NDA. Discretion paramount. Salary non-negotiable and substantial. It was a fantasy, a job for someone with decades of experience. Evelyn, on a whim, fueled by desperation and a glass of cheap wine, sent in her old CV along with a scathing yet brilliant analysis she had written on a newly discovered Vermeer that she was certain was fake. She did not expect a reply. She got one. 2 hours later, an email. "Be at this address tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring your passport." The address was a nondescript glass tower in Canary Wharf. The lift required a key card, a silent guard provided. She was led to an office penthouse that was empty, save for one desk, 2 chairs, and a single painting on the wall. Julian Sterling stood in front of it. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't shake her hand. He just pointed at the painting, a chaotic, beautiful piece in the style of Jackson Pollock. "I paid £22 million for this, at a private auction last year," he said, his voice as quiet as it was on the courthouse steps. "It was authenticated by the artist's estate. Tell me about it." Evelyn looked. She truly looked. She walked closer, examining the canvas, the paint splatters, the signature. For 10 minutes, the only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. "It's beautiful," she finally said. "I didn't ask if it was beautiful," Sterling countered, still with his back to her. "It's a forgery," Evelyn stated. He turned. His eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Pollock's method is about controlled chaos. This is just chaos. The drip patterns are wrong. They are too hesitant in some places, too aggressive in others. But the real proof," she pointed to a small corner, "is the paint. It's titanium white, but it's an acrylic-based titanium, not the oil-based casein he used during this period. This was likely painted in the 1980s, not the 1950s. Sterling stared at her. His face was unreadable. He walked to his desk and pressed a button on his intercom. "Send in Mr. Riley." A moment later, a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit rushed in. "Sir, Mr. Riley, this is Ms. Chase. She has just identified the Pollock as a forgery." Mr. Riley laughed nervously. "Sir, with all due respect, my team at Sotheby's authenticated it. It's impossible." "Ms. Chase," Sterling cut in. "What did you say about the paint?" "It's acrylic-based titanium white," Evelyn said, her voice firm. "His was casein. You can run a simple mass spectrometry on it. I'll stake my reputation on it." "Riley," Sterling said, "have the lab do it. Now, if she's right, you're fired." Mr. Riley paled and rushed out of the room. Sterling turned back to Evelyn. "Are you divorced?" he asked. Evelyn winced. "It's in process." "Your husband is Gavin Thorne of Kingsbridge Capital," Sterling stated. It was not a question. "He's a portfolio manager, over-leveraged in his personal life, and believes he is smarter than he is. He is cheating on you with his solicitor." Evelyn was speechless. How did you know that?" "I don't tolerate fools, Ms. Chase, and I don't hire people I haven't thoroughly vetted. The background check was exhaustive." He tapped his desk. "Your analysis of the fake Vermeer was correct. My team came to the same conclusion last week. It took them 3 months. It took you 1 night." He walked to the window. "I own the largest private art collection in the world. It's a liability. It's an asset. And it is full of snakes like Riley who tell me what I want to hear. I need someone who will tell me the truth, even if it costs me £22 million. He turned. "You start today. The job pays £1 million a year plus expenses. You report only to me. Your first task is to audit my entire collection piece by piece and find every other mistake Mr. Riley made. My car is waiting downstairs to take you to your new flat. Sign the NDA on the desk." That was 4 months ago. 4 months of 18-hour days, flights to Zurich, Tokyo, and Paris. 4 months of rediscovering the razor-sharp intellect she had buried to make Gavin comfortable. She was not his mistress. She was his most valuable, trusted asset manager. The £50,000 settlement was not a lifeline. It was an insult. And Mr. Sterling, who despised being insulted almost as much as he despised being lied to, had insisted on picking her up from the courthouse himself. The hammer of justice. The King Falls. Gavin did not go to the Wolseley. He didn't go back to the office. He went to the Polanco penthouse, his penthouse, and poured himself a glass of Macallan 25. He downed it in one go. "Gavin, you're scaring me," Bianca said, pacing the marble floor. "Who was she with? You said she was broke. You said she was nothing." "He's a client," Gavin mumbled, pouring another. "He's not just a client. He's the client. Sterling Industries has half its liquid assets managed by our London office. He is Julian Sterling." Bianca's eyes widened, but not with fear, with calculation. "So she's his girlfriend? She left you for a billionaire?" "No!" Gavin roared, slamming the glass onto the table. "I left her. She got lucky. She must have, I don't know, met him in a bar. She's a gold digger, that's all it is." But his words sounded hollow, even to him. The Evelyn who got into that car was not the mousy, apologetic woman he had kicked out. She was cold, she was confident, and she was working. Geneva, Sotheby's, the Rotterdam acquisition. He went into his home office and booted up his computer. He pulled up the Kingsbridge Capital internal database. He searched Sterling Julian. The file was virtually empty. Client level, Zeus. Eyes only, managed by the executive Mayfair office. He was locked out. He, a senior VP, was locked out of a client file. He spent the next week in a pure, acid fog of obsession. He couldn't work. He couldn't sleep. Every time he looked at Bianca, he saw her $10,000 Birkin bag and compared it to the casual way Julian Sterling had stepped out of a $3 million car. His whole world was built on the hierarchy of wealth. He was a success because he had the penthouse, the car, the beautiful woman. He had won the divorce. But in 1 second, on the steps of a courthouse, Julian Sterling had turned his entire life into a pathetic joke. He started investigating. He used his contacts to find out about Evelyn's new life. She's not his girlfriend, a contact at a rival firm told him over drinks after Gavin plied him with expensive whiskey. I've heard the rumors. Sterling hired an unknown woman to head his private collection. They call her the Nun. She's brutal. She's been cleaning house, fired half his European staff, exposed 3 high-level forgeries, saved him over $100 million in the last quarter alone. They say she answers to no one but the ghost himself. Gavin felt sick. She saved $100 million, his Evelyn. The woman he had told was too simple to understand his work. The humiliation was a physical pain. It wasn't just that she was successful. It was that her success was in the one field she had given up for him. He hadn't just divorced her. He had drastically underestimated her. And in his world, underestimation was a fatal sin. The final fall, the Queen's indifference. Gavin expected to see triumph. He expected to see a smirk. He expected the same mockery he had shown her. He saw none of it. Evelyn merely looked at him, her expression unreadable, and then a flicker of pity. It was the same look she had given him on the courthouse steps, indifference tinged with mild sadness. She turned, straightened her shoulders, and entered her building. That single look shattered him more than the handcuffs, the realization that he wasn't even worthy of her rage. He was just a problem that had been resolved. A year had passed. Gavin Thorne's name was a ghost, a cautionary tale whispered in London's high-stakes poker rooms and on the trading floors of Canary Wharf. He was the story of the man who had it all and lost it. A fool who believed himself a king. After a humiliating 6-month trial, where his entire life of petty theft, lies, and emotional abuse was laid bare, he had pleaded guilty to 8 counts of wire fraud and embezzlement. He was now serving a 7-year sentence in a low-security federal prison. He had lost the penthouse, his reputation, his car, and his freedom. He was, by every metric he had ever valued, a total failure. Evelyn Chase's name, however, was becoming a legend. Tonight was the coronation. The Victoria and Albert Museum, V&A, was a fortress of light against the cool London night. The unveiling of the Sterling Wing was the most anticipated cultural event of the decade. It wasn't just a new wing. It was a tectonic shift in the art world. Julian Sterling, the ghost of Canary Wharf, had finally decided to show his cards, and he had chosen Evelyn Chase to be his dealer. Evelyn stood just inside the vaulted entrance, a masterpiece of glass and light linking the old building to the hyper-modern new wing. The wing itself was her design, her vision, a 3-story atrium of Italian white marble and polished steel, designed to feel less like a museum and more like a cathedral. And tonight, it was packed. The air buzzed with the sound of quiet generational wealth. Billionaires mingled with national prize-winning artists. Politicians kissed the hands of European royalty. The scent of orchids and expensive champagne floated through the atmosphere. Evelyn herself was almost unrecognizable from the woman on the courthouse steps. She wore a simple midnight blue silk evening gown. It was understated, elegant, and had cost more than Gavin's BMW. Her hair, which she used to pull back in a severe, apologetic bun, was styled in soft, confident waves. She wore no jewelry, save for a pair of sapphire teardrop earrings Sterling had gifted her, a signing bonus, he had called them, after her first month. She was not the mousy, trembling woman he had ridiculed. She was the Sterling Eye, a name coined by a fawning Vanity Fair profile, a title she had initially hated, but now accepted. She was the principal curator and chair of the Sterling Art Foundation, a £10 billion philanthropic endowment. Her job was no longer just acquiring art, but preserving it, studying it, and sharing it. She was, in this world, terrifyingly powerful, and in this moment, she was terrified. This was her debut. For the last 18 months, she had been a ghost, operating in the shadows, just like her boss. She had been in dusty archives in Florence, high-tech vetting labs in Zurich, and tense private auctions in Hong Kong. She had worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week, driven by a fierce, burning need to prove her own worth to the only person who mattered, herself. "It is adequate." The voice, quiet as a tomb, came from her side. Julian Sterling had materialized from the crowd. He was dressed in his uniform, a perfect charcoal suit. He didn't look at the crowd. He was looking at the atrium's centerpiece, the lost Rembrandt they had acquired from the Rotterdam deal, now illuminated to perfection. "Only adequate, Mr. Sterling?" Evelyn asked, a small smile playing on her lips. "The lighting on the left hand is half a degree off," he murmured. "It's hitting the signet ring, but missing the texture of the cuff. Fix that." "I will have it fixed," Evelyn said, making a mental note. "Good." He finally turned his steel-gray eyes to her. "The board is ecstatic. The Times is calling it a triumph of New World philanthropy. You have done well, Ms. Chase." From Julian Sterling, "You have done well," was the equivalent of a marching band and a parade. "Thank you, sir," she said. "Don't thank me. You executed the strategy." He nodded toward the crowd. "Now go. This is your night. Mingle with the vipers. I will be watching." He retreated into an unlit alcove, a ghost at his own party, and simply observed. Evelyn took a deep breath and stepped into the main hall. She was immediately swarmed. Donors, critics, artists, everyone wanted a piece of the Sterling Eye. She handled them with a grace she didn't know she possessed, discussing a 17th century pigment composition with one and endowment strategy with another. She was fluid, confident, and precise. Then she saw her, across the room, standing next to a much older, more corpulent man with a politician's smile, was Bianca Hayes. She was poured into a garish, bright gold dress, her blonde hair piled high. She was still beautiful, and she still carried a Birkin bag, a new one in bright pink crocodile. She had landed on her feet, just as Evelyn knew she would. Bianca was a survivor, a trophy who knew her own market value. Their eyes met across the room. Evelyn saw a flicker of emotions on Bianca's face. First confusion. Who is that? Then dawning recognition, followed by a wave of pure, unadulterated shock. Bianca's painted smile wavered. She saw Evelyn's dress, her composure, the wing of a museum that was essentially her project. Bianca looked at her own garish dress, at the aging man whose arm she held, and for one beautiful second, she looked vulgar. Evelyn did not smirk. She did not glare. She did not give her the satisfaction of any emotion at all. She simply held her gaze, gave a small, polite, and utterly dismissive nod, and turned back to the museum director she was speaking with. It was a small victory, but it was sweet. She was so focused on this small triumph that she didn't see the real threat until he was right in front of her. "Ms. Chase, a pleasure." His name was Preston Reed. He was the chief curator of the National Gallery, a man of old money, with a patrician accent and a deep disdain for anyone who hadn't inherited their position. He saw the art world as his exclusive club, and she was the new rich upstart with a billionaire's checkbook crashing through the doors. In his eyes, she wasn't a curator. She was a glorified personal shopper. She was Gavin Thorne, but with a Cambridge PhD. "Mr. Reed?" Evelyn said, her voice cool. "I'm so glad you could make it. I hope you're enjoying the exhibition." Reed, flanked by a small, parasitic entourage of critics and reporters, smiled a thin, condescending sneer. "It is certainly an exhibition," he said, letting the word hang. "So much volume. Mr. Sterling has been very busy. One wonders if there was any real strategy behind the acquisitions, or if it was simply a matter of, 'I'll take one of those and one of those.'" The reporters scribbled. This was blood in the water. "The strategy," Evelyn said, her voice perfectly even, "is truth. We acquire pieces that have been lost, forgotten, or misattributed. We use Mr. Sterling's resources to restore them and return them to the public. Such as the Donatello in the South Gallery, the one your own museum declared a 19th century imitation." Reed's face tightened. She had publicly reminded him that she had purchased a piece he rejected and that her team had since authenticated, making it one of the world's most valuable sculptures. "A lucky strike, my dear," Reed scoffed. "A blind mole finds a nut in all that, but luck runs out." He turned and pointed his long, pale finger at the centerpiece, the Rembrandt. "This piece, for example," he said, raising his voice, projecting it to the crowd. "The lost Rembrandt. A bold claim. My colleagues at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam are deeply skeptical. They have held their own version, the Rotterdam Rembrandt, for 50 years. They believe it is the original." He moved closer to her, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. "They believe Mr. Sterling, and by extension you, simply bought the provenance, paid off a few experts to create a paper trail. A costly and embarrassing mistake. You have built your entire wing around a forgery, Ms. Chase, and tomorrow the Times will run a front-page story on that very skepticism." This was it. The ambush. The crowd went silent. Reporters' pens flew. This wasn't just a challenge. It was an execution. He was accusing her in front of the entire art world of being a fraud. He was trying to do exactly what Gavin had done. Mock her, dismiss her, and paint her as a stupid, unqualified woman who was out of her depth. She looked past Reed's smug face across the vast atrium and saw Julian Sterling in the shadows. He was watching. He made no move to help. This was her test. Evelyn turned her back on Reed and looked at the painting. She looked at it for 10 silent seconds. She let the tension build. The only sound was the distant click of a camera. When she turned back, she was no longer nervous. She was a different person. She was the Sterling eye. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice clear and cutting. "You are right to be skeptical. I was too." She walked toward the painting, and the crowd parted for her. Reed had no choice but to follow. She stopped right in front of it. "You and your colleagues in Amsterdam are correct," she said. "The Rotterdam piece is brilliant. The brushwork is exquisite. The composition is identical. For 50 years, it has been unquestionably held as the original." Reed smiled. "So you admit it." "But it is a copy," Evelyn interjected, her voice like steel. A masterful, contemporary copy, painted by a student in his studio, and do you know how we know? Reed was silent. Evelyn pointed at the painted cuff on the subject's left wrist. We know because of this. You have seen the painting, Mr. Reed, but you haven't studied it. My team and I spent 4 months on this piece. We ran mass spectrometry, X-ray fluorescence, and infrared reflectography. The Rotterdam piece is painted on a standard oak panel, which is correct for the period. She tapped the wall label next to the painting. This one, however, is painted on imported New World mahogany panel, a wood Rembrandt was known to favor for his most important commissions, but which his students could almost never afford. But that's not the proof. That's just a clue. She looked directly at the New York Times reporter. The proof is in the mistakes. She motioned to a museum assistant, who handed her a tablet. She tapped the screen, and a large monitor on the wall lit up, showing an infrared image of the painting. This, Evelyn said, is the pentimento, the underlying drawing, the artist's original sketch that he painted over. Look at the subject's right hand. In the underlying drawing, he was holding a pair of gloves. In the final painting, the gloves are gone, and his hand rests on his sword hilt. She zoomed in, her voice ringing with absolute, unshakable authority. A forger, Mr. Reed, copies the final product. They copy what they see. The Rotterdam painting. It has no pentimento. It was painted perfectly in one go. It is a brilliant copy of this, our final version. She turned to face the stunned crowd. Only the master changes his mind. The Rotterdam piece is a copy. This is the original. This is the process. This is the truth. Then she delivered the final, devastating blow. She looked at Reed, her expression not triumphant, but almost pitying. The same look she had given Gavin as he was led to the police car. My full analysis, including the spectral data and infrared scans, was sent to the Rijksmuseum 2 days ago. We received their official retraction of their original claim this morning. They will be co-authoring our paper on the discovery. She looked at the Times reporter. I believe their official statement is being sent to your editor, right now. You might want to check your email. Your front-page story is going to need a new headline. Preston Reed's face was chalk white. He had been so confident. He had been so arrogant. He had been academically, forensically, and publicly dismantled. He did not say a word. He simply turned. His entourage melted away from him, and he walked in humiliated silence out of the wing. The silence that followed lasted 3 seconds. Then it broke. The room erupted in sustained, thunderous applause. It was not just polite. It was a roar. Evelyn stood by the Rembrandt, her hand resting lightly on the wall label. She had done it. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't cried. She had used her mind. She had used the knowledge she was told was worthless. She had won. Later, after the applause finally subsided, she walked to the podium to give her official remarks. Her earlier nerves were gone. She owned this room. She owned her life. Art, she said, her voice clear and strong, is not about possession. It's not about an asset on a balance sheet or a trophy for a wall. It is about preservation. It is about a conversation across centuries. It is about finding the truth in the canvas, even when that truth has been painted over. She smiled, a small, genuine smile that lit up her face. For too long, this world has been dominated by those who see art as one more way to demonstrate their power. Tonight, that changes. The Sterling Wing opens not as a monument to wealth, but as a commitment to truth, to the stories that were almost lost. The applause was, if anything, even louder. As the party began to wind down, the young, enthusiastic reporter from the New York Times, the one who had just landed the biggest story of her career, found Evelyn by the window. "Ms. Chase, that was incredible. An unbelievable achievement. You have come out of nowhere in the last 18 months. You've completely reshaped the auction world. What is your secret?" Evelyn took a sip of champagne, looking out at the lights of London. She thought of the courthouse, the smell of stale coffee, the feeling of Gavin's sneering gaze, the moment she thought her life was over, that she was worthless. "There is no secret," Evelyn said, her voice warm. "I simply stopped allowing other people to define my value. It turns out my pretty little head had far more inside it than anyone, including myself, realized." The reporter furiously scribbled across the room. Standing alone next to a 17th century Vermeer was Julian Sterling. He was, as always, watching. He watched Evelyn command the room, not with threats or volume, but with quiet, unshakable competence. He crossed her gaze. He didn't smile. A smile was too much. But he gave her a single, slow nod, the highest possible compliment from the ghost of Canary Wharf. It wasn't a nod from boss to employee. It wasn't a nod from a man to a woman he had saved. It was a nod of respect, from one master to another. And that is the story of Evelyn Chase. She learned that the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is building a life so magnificent that your past becomes utterly irrelevant. Gavin tried to shatter her, but only succeeded in removing himself as the biggest obstacle to her success. She didn't need a billionaire to save her. She only needed a chance to save herself. Final CTA and concluding thoughts. What did you think of Evelyn's transformation? Was Gavin's downfall just, or was it a cold, calculated move by Sterling? Let us know your take in the comments below. We read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice and vindication, please show your support by hitting that like button. It truly helps the channel. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth. Most importantly, if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and hit that bell. We post new stories every week, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for listening.